This is designed to provide insights into the big leagues of technology, merger and acquisition activity. The panel is represented by 4 major companies that are very active acquirers, plus one CEO who has been has an unbelievable resume of transaction experience. The 4 companies that are public here have $370 billion of market cap. They have almost $100 billion of cash in the bank, and they do between 15 and 20 announced deals a year. So you're in the right room if you have any interest in some of that money. Let me make some introductions here, and I'm going to do this in the order in which the companies were founded. So I'm going to start with Lorenzo de la Vega at the far end. Lorenzo represents the only company in the room that's 100 years old this year.
Don't look a day over 90 though.
And he is Vice President of Business Development for Applications Integration Middleware in the software group. That means all the deals related to the WebSphere brand and other things. He's a 28-year veteran of IBM and has 19 years in the M&A activity there. Next is Jonathan Becker with SAP. Companies, please speak English. The company is not quite 40 years old, but obviously a major player. Interestingly, Jonathan is EVP and Chief Marketing Officer of SAP. You notice that we have a variety of different backgrounds. Lorenzo is a finance guy, basically. Jonathan is a marketing guy. He's been at SAP since '07, when the company he was running was acquired, Pilot Software. He is not unusual in that regard. There are a lot of CEOs who sell their companies, and some of them stay for a long run. Jonathan's also been CEO at Accrued Software, was a founder and CEO of Neo Vista Software. He's been around the block. Deborah Danielson represents CA Technologies, a youngish 35-year-old company. CA is noted throughout its history as being a very successful acquirer. And Deborah just stepped up 7 months ago to the SVP of Merger and Acquisition Strategy at CA. She's been there for 23 years. She came up through the technology side. Interestingly, she's one of only 15 distinguished engineers at CA and was the first woman honored as such. In the young, hot public company category, we have VMware, only 13 years old, and Shekhar Iyer is the VP of Strategy and Business Development there. He's been very busy. He's been there 7 years. He's done a lot of deals. He came not directly through an acquisition, but he was a VP of BindView, which was sold to Symantec, so he's been on both sides of the table. He's a strategist and a technologist, the only panelist with both a PhD in computer sciences and an MBA. Finally, John Dillon, who is CEO of EngineYard. As you may have heard about EngineYard in his earlier panel yesterday or throughout the conference, it is a very hot Ruby on Rails company. It's the classic venture-backed, rapidly growing, emerging company. John is in his, I don't know, is this your 4th CEO role? Having been CEO at Hyperion, at Salesforce, and at Navis, which was sold 4 years ago to Zebra Technologies. And there's some very interesting things that could happen there. John's also an active director and has been involved in a number of companies that have conducted transactions, most recently Epicor, which was taken private by a private equity investor at about $1 billion valuation. So this panel has an incredible array of experiences to share with you today. We've only got 25 minutes to talk about those experiences, and we want to use a chunk of that time to answer your questions. So we're gonna try to be crisp. let me start by asking the large company representatives, and I'll ask Lorenzo to go first. Give us a feel for how M&A fits into the strategy of, in your case, IBM, Lorenzo.
Sure.
And why it's going to be successful.
Absolutely. It's really an extension of our organic growth business. At the end of the day, even though we spend $60 billion plus a year on research and development, I think we very much recognize, even with that kind of spending, it really can't corner innovation. And so we look for companies that complement our strategy, will accelerate our growth. We've committed to Wall Street to spend $20 billion in incremental deals between now and 2015. And so we're going to be looking for companies that fit our strategy, that have the right characteristics for us to integrate them into IBM, so in terms of cultural fit, business model, and finally, we also need to make sure that we earn a fair return for our shareholders. So those are kind of the three things we look at.
All right. Jonathan, you get to go next.
So look,
how's SAP going to buy the right companies at the right price and get great value for shareholders?
here's the thing, if you talk to any of us afterwards, we're all going to say the same thing, which is we don't do tactical acquisitions, we do strategic. And I think it's just...
Except for the tactical.
Except for the tactical ones. And the point is actually 90% of them are really tactical, we just don't like to say that. So the idea is, why do you do it? Is he doing it for financial return? Are you doing it for technology and a whole new portfolio? The answer is always yes, you do it for both. And so the way I really think about it differently is we typically do acquisitions for market creation, to get into things that we're not in. I mean, the acquisition of Pilot got us into the analytics category. We learned a lot, and then it paved the way to do business objects $6 billion later. So same thing, we got into mobility, did a small thing, learned what it is, then do Sybase, same with cloud. So I think in general, don't ask whether it's strategic or tactical, just figure out if it's a good fit for the company.
All right. Deborah, you're probably changing things a bit at CA as you take on this new role. Talk about how CA looks at M&A.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, I think I've been with CA for quite a long time, and the M&A strategy from many years ago was really one of rolling up customer bases. And our M&A strategy now is very much different. We're very much focused on using M&A as a way to respond more rapidly to the changes that are occurring particularly in the cloud space. It takes some time to develop a product organically, and when the market is changing as rapidly, when the technology is changing as rapidly as it is right now, you need to be able to respond more rapidly to those changes in technologies. And I think that mergers and acquisitions become a really effective way of being agile in terms of responding to what's changing at that level.
Very good. Shaker, youngish, hot, high multiple, public stock, cash in the bank.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know how much cash you have in the bank. I know you're youngish and hot.
I mean, many of you might have heard Paul speak earlier, but from a VMware perspective, I think we're in the fortunate position where we're sort of the cusp between a smaller and a large company. I think we are fortunate that our foundational business is still having growth that is much larger than most people's growth businesses. But at the same time, we have established a footprint where we are starting to look at areas that are adjacent to what we are doing, particularly in the areas around application platforms, end user computing and management. And so it is an acknowledgement that there are pockets of innovation outside of the company that would be certainly useful for us to keep watching and bringing in. A majority of our acquisitions are led by a strategy that either establishes a new platform in the space that we are out to go after, or they are technology tuck-ins to support the existing ones. But I would agree with the earlier panelists that in many cases it is an extension of the organic growth. It's not to basically just kind of knee-jerk try to insert something that will bring everything market down.
Very good. John, let me give you a chance to share a perspective. What does it take from the other side of the table to make a great deal for the entrepreneurs and early private company shareholders, and then also turn that into a great deal for the acquiring shareholders?
So from the startup company, all you want is a really great price. That's easy. The thing that happens just past the price is emotion. if you go to a board of directors and it's got maybe a founder, maybe a CEO that came later, like I did at Engineer, every one of the people around the table has a different mindset about money. You could be a venture capitalist who've had a couple of great exits, and you could have one that's dying. And one is very anxious to sell, wants a new price, and the other one, wants to swing for the fence. And you get the same thing with founders, and that's something that sometimes the acquiring company doesn't effectively suss out. And the second thing is that there's a lot of emotion associated with what does this mean to me? Now, that sounds a little bit like the first point I just made, but it really is more what happens after the company's absorbed. In the recent transaction with Epicor that was about $1 billion, the CEO had been at the company for about 10 years, and all of the employees had grown up with him, and while he had a great exit financially, he was concerned about the rank and file employees and what would happen when they were absorbed. And I think that's something oftentimes that isn't considered as effectively on both sides of the table.
Good. So every deal you've ever been involved in worked?
Absolutely not.
Okay. Let me ask the buyers on the panel. Tell us about a deal that you're really proud of. A fairly recent one that you've made, and you think it's going to make a big difference down the road. Who wants to go first?
I'll start with Cast Iron, which is about a year-old acquisition, and Cast Iron, speaking of cloud, does cloud integration. So the ability to lash together data, if you will, from Salesforce and SAP or wherever it might be, but to do it without program. So it's they're doing terrifically well. One of the things that's really helping us, frankly, is with the advent of mobile. A lot of apps are being written, and particularly business-to-employee apps need data from various places. And Cast Iron is just not well part of this.
And did you have any trouble with the emotions
Well,
of
absolutely.
the sellers?
Absolutely. You go from a small team that's very closely knit together, and now you have 427,000 brothers and sisters. It's a little bit daunting. And John's absolutely right. A lot of it is emotion, and getting people beyond that emotion to the realm of what is possible inside your new environment, rather than what you can't do in your new environment.
And was everybody happy to pay the price you paid?
We always fight about, we paid too much or we paid too little. But at the end of the day, by definition, if you did a transaction, both people agree to the price. So you have to move on past that too.
Enough people are happy.
Yeah,
Good.
absolutely.
Who wants to go next?
I'll go. But I'm going to take a contrary view of it, which is, I think emotion really is the point, but emotion doesn't end when you strike the deal. In fact, it gets worse after the deal.
Absolutely.
Frankly, look, I'll say what all of us know, which is most acquisitions don't really work. Whatever the original business case gets blown up after the acquisition, you go relook at it again and say, now we know what's really happening at the company because we acquired it, we'll build a new acquisition base. And post-merger is hard. And I think the only way it's successful is the people who come in say, okay, now it's a new company, it's a new way of doing things, let's adopt that. Just use my example again. We were what we thought was great technology, but we had no distribution vehicle. So as a past CEO, I spent all my time externally before the acquisition talking to analysts, talking to press, talking to customers, and I learned really fast that doesn't work anymore. It doesn't matter. SAP is thousands of times bigger, so I changed to just spending all my time with sales guys, teaching them about how they could make a lot of money selling my product, and that's the only way it really worked. So I think the dirty truth is, especially since if you get acquired, there's a lot of earn-out clauses and you make more money after this transaction in many cases than you do during the transaction. Think about what you do well versus what your acquirer does well and leverage their strengths. And the ones that don't work is when you say, no, we're still going to do it the same way we did it before the transaction. Doesn't work that way.
So now that you're on the big side of the table,
Yeah.
helping put deals together, do you like earn-outs?
Do I like earn-outs? Absolutely. Because I actually don't believe in acquiring technology, I believe in acquiring people. And the only way earn-outs really work is if there's an incentive for them to stay. And frankly, I think we've got the best culture of any company on this panel right now. So if they stay for long enough to learn about that culture, then they'll stay a long time. And so earn-outs help them stay long enough to get ingrained.
Very interesting perspective. Do all of you like earn-outs on the buy side?
Not at all. We don't.
I said that because I knew he'd say it.
We don't. I mean, we try to work it from a different angle, right? Which is putting together a shared vision of where you want to take the company. Ultimately, engineers in particular, they want to do something that's cool and meaningful. It's not all about money. So can you build the right approach so that you build a great business together? But it's always difficult. I mean, retention is always a huge issue, no matter how you slice it. I've concluded that about 60% of the people will automatically say, hey, you know what, I'll give it a shot. 20% say it's the greatest thing that's ever happened, and 20% will say it's the worst thing that's ever happened. And over time, those percentages don't seem to change.
And the problem with earnouts, of course, is if the outside investors own a majority of the company and it's an earnout for all the shareholders, it really doesn't have any retention value anyway.
Right, and you're assuming that it is structured as part of the deal and not something on top.
There is retention compensation.
Right.
That's good. That's
Fine, we still call it.
Yeah. We would take retention very seriously. I think with the earnouts structured as sort of performance-based earnouts, we are probably less common in our transactions. I think primarily because something else you said is often the case, which is the business plans often change pretty rapidly once you're acquired. So anything that you actually put as metrics on day one of acquisition.
Rip it up. Yeah.
So that's why it's sort of hard to do.
There isn't that sometimes the cultural issues and that combining those smaller organizations with large organizations becomes the elephant in the room. And regardless of the business plans or any of the other, metrics-based type measurements, if your cultural fit doesn't work and if there isn't a way to transition to that, it's sort of a problem.
And how do you deal with that? Yeah, how do you deal with that before you get the deal done? How do you really evaluate the cultural fit?
Bob,
Anybody have a brilliant way?
there's no brilliant way, but it's the people. Look at their backgrounds. You can kind of tell, especially if you've been on both sides.
Yeah, you can. I looked at one company where the team was doing a management presentation, and the CEO got frustrated with the CFO and kept telling them, look, go to this cell, that spreadsheet. And at some point, he basically said, okay, move aside. And he took control of the computer and thought, maybe we have a control freak here. And we actually stepped away from the transaction. Thinking it was not the guy's not going to be a good fit for us. And so sometimes it's the little things that are very telling.
Yeah, we probably look at, I'd say from a culture standpoint, I think if you have a culture which is sort of technology-rich, then you try to see if that is mirrored in the other companies. I will say though, off late we've acquired a couple of companies in San Francisco versus in the sort of South Bay area. Culturally, there is definitely a difference. I mean, everybody in Palo Alto wanting to move to the offices of either Slide Rocket or Social Trust because they're just so different.
Yeah, there's always something that's so hot that it distracts hardworking people. You don't want that to happen. Right? So John, when you're on the sell side of the transaction, you get a sense for the culture as well. But doesn't price mean everything? Have you ever been with a company that sold for a lower price because they thought the culture might be better?
Occasionally, I mean, especially as a startup company, you've got promise and you've got some early traction, but you haven't done it yet. There's no there. And you either sell when the promise is as good as it is, or you wait till you've actually delivered real financial results 5 or 10 years later. And there's sort of like two peaks when you should sell. And I think for most entrepreneurs, and a lot of you are entrepreneurs, you may have something that's really great and really promising, but you're early. You may have some good engineers, you may have a few good early customers. You've got a long road to hoe. I think from start to IPO, if there even is an IPO market, takes about 8 years. That's a lot of your life. And so, you can look at this and you can do kind of the risk equation and go, well, if we wait 8 years, what's likely to be happening in the world, in our lives, and the like. And sometimes we get pretty frothy here in Silicon Valley, and we think we're worth like a fortune, and occasionally some companies get huge outcomes. But as a founder or an entrepreneur, a fair price a lot of times is a much safer, much better decision economically than holding out. And especially during the last bubble, there were companies that if they had to do it again would have taken the reasonable offers they got from companies like these instead of demanding prices that were unrealistic.
But it also depends what's driving the thing. I can first time we ever sold a company, or I was ever involved in a company that was sold, we actually had 2 offers. It's great to be in a situation where we have competing offers. One company was literally 20% more than the other, but they wanted to acquire us basically because they had competing product. And we knew, although they wouldn't tell us, that the likelihood that they were going to decommission the product, take it off the market, and maybe even put us out of business. And the other company needed us, from what we could tell. So now then, are you doing it purely for financial, or are you doing it because you really believe in your vision? And that was a tough discussion with the investors and the board. And we ultimately went with the lower price because, you know, the 20% didn't mean enough to the investors to force us to take that.
Interesting, very interesting. Okay, so last question, and then we'll open it up to the audience. What's the one that got away? I mean, is there a great company that you wanted to buy, Shekhar, and you couldn't get it, or somebody else got it? I mean, you can name names if you want.
Well, no, I think in an experience of M&A over several years, I'm sure everybody has sort of pet deals that didn't happen. I will say we've got at least a couple of transactions that I look back and say, oh, if we had done those, then they would be like. I mean, for example, we've looked at things in protocol spaces, we've looked at things in application development spaces, etc., where certainly I think if things had worked differently, it probably would have been to mutual companies' advantage. That said, I will say there's probably a discipline in how you deal with M&A which causes us at times to walk away. As always, I would say you probably get it right 8 times out of 10. Just like a VC.
Hall of Fame.
Yeah. No, I think we are, as a company, we're probably young enough in that most of our acquisitions are smaller. We don't do sort of gigantic big deals that have a high risk of failure. And so in many cases, to us, success is if the product gets integrated nicely and we've actually released the product and it's out there in the market, which has happened in most of the instances that we've got. But from the standpoint of what's the economy, yeah, certainly. I mean, I don't want to pick any specific names, but I would look back and say, yeah, we've done this.
Any other war stories people want to share?
I mean, it's my sense is, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of deals I regret not getting.
That little thing called Microsoft back a few years.
Well, you know, the thing is too, there's a lot of deals I'm damn glad we didn't go after. But the reality is, there's always more attractive ideas than there is money anyway. So when one gets away, just move on to the next one. We'll go in another direction.